Okay, so we have a bit of a different kind of dialogue here today. That being, I'm here in the Unreal Engine itself. Because partly because my camera died halfway through me trying to record this devlog, and I don't have the time to wait for the battery to recharge. Partly because we're going to be talking about some game feedback that I have here. As you can see, hold on, here it is. I'm going to talk through these points one at a time, and I'm going to just show you some of the issues live playing through this. So we don't have. Do we have game audio? We do have game audio. Okay, so I've since the last time we looked at this, I have changed some of the lighting settings. Also, I am a very different with how my eyes look. I'll get into that in a minute as well. One of the first issues that people found is yeah, some of the spotlights are very much visible. Also, you can look through the world. That's a fairly easy thing to fix that I still need to do. But yeah, you can see the spotlights that are here to like give a little bit of a contrast to the more cold lighting with some orangey warm light. I just need to place this inside of the tree because it's not casting any shadows anyway, so it'll just still illuminate this entire area. But it won't have this weird ass floating orb cone thing here, which is there because of the fog. That being said, let's go down this list in order of severity, because we have a issue with depth perception in certain cases, and where a lot of that is frankly, and that's a little bit overkill, a lot of that is frankly just due to the fact that people might just not be used to the physics of the game. There's two things that I can do to fix that. Number one is be more mindful of the actual depth perception when I use different camera angles, right? Number two is one thing that, for instance, Crash Bandicoot 4 did when that was made, is, as you can see, when I jump, it's not necessarily clear where I'm going to land. And if I just make a hit scan from where my character is to where the ground is, and on that point where the ground is, I draw like a little circle or a little indicator of this is exactly where your character is floating above. So if you stop moving right now, you'll fall right down to it. That will also help. Then we have the issue of the character, when you stop pressing the forward button, still moving quite a bit forward. That needs to pretty much immediately come to a stop. Like, yeah, you stop accelerating, but you don't stop moving. So if you're already like at a certain velocity and you jump without holding that directional button, you still move in that direction, as you can see right here. And that needs to be just not the case, because for precision platforming, that is just no good. Another fun thing that I added, by the way, is this disappearing and appearing animation. It just helps to sell things just a little bit better. As well as the fact that I changed quite a bit of things about the camera system, so this level is fucking unplayable at the moment. And yeah, I also changed a couple of things about scaling for those enemies, which I haven't changed everywhere yet. So, long story short, and when you die, you also see that disappearing animation happen. Only downside is that the shadow does not appear in time with that animation, because it's not actually like removing any of the mesh, of course. It's only removing or changing the material to a material that is invisible, which is a asset that I got on the Unreal marketplace, or the Epic Games Store marketplace, whatever you want to call it. So, in theory, when I enter this hitbox right here, we should... No, I've changed the camera system quite a bit, as you can tell. It's in need of some more reworking. Anyway, next up we have the issue here with the flipping platforms. They have no anticipation, and as you can see right here, it's really hard to anticipate in any meaningful way when they're going to flip. Specifically here, that's an issue because at no point in this section do you get an opportunity to see them all flip in sequence. So getting the rhythm down is really, really difficult because of that. So to counter that, I'm going to have to make sure that I can show the player more of the entire sequence before they actually get to it. And on top of that, add a little bit of an anticipation movement before they actually flip. Just have them wiggle around like 3 times, back and forth a little bit before they actually flip. So people know, oh shit, something's about to happen. This will also have a positive effect on the fact that we will have players experiencing a little bit of like an adrenaline rush and panic jumping to the next platform and maybe then missing that jump because of the panic. And then when they die, they'll feel a little bit less ticked off by the platform just randomly flipping and killing them. And they'll more likely feel like, oh, that was my fault, I missed that jump. So that's something that I'm definitely going to need to add. The walls in this level that I'm playing through right now, in certain places, are way too low. Talking about depth perception, this is one of the places where, honestly, even I playing through this still have issues with the depth perception in this area. So this is one of those places where I just need a different camera position to go through this. But, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, no. I changed the camera system to, I'll show you the way it used to work and the way it works now. Is if I go into my levels, I open the test level, hallway test. As you can see, we have these boxes here, right? And these boxes are camera changes. So when you enter this collision box, we will change to this camera perspective, which is slightly higher up than the default one. Used to be that when you exit this box on this side, it would go back to the default view. I've changed that to where it doesn't go back to the default view. And that is because if it does, and I don't know if I can maybe show you this live. Yeah, so if it does, I'll just reconnect these because I haven't deleted that code at all. It'll make things a little bit more smooth. Like we go up and then we go back down to the usual. But if we... This is actually a very bad example of how that happens. But if we... You see? If we go back and forth over the edge, the camera goes really fucking glitchy. So in order to fix that, I disconnect this and overlap. And instead I have to just fill the entire level with these boxes and just make sure that between the end of this box and the start of the next box, there's enough time for that camera transition in either direction to happen. So like there's a second of actually like straight up walking path where nothing strange happens. But that does mean that I have to like go over this level again and change a thing or two fairly significantly. So where were we? Oh yeah, the walls in this level are too low. I'll just like go to it through this. So if you damage boost of these things and jump on this, you can just walk to the end of the level. More importantly, and it's kind of difficult to see here, so I'll put this on lit. If you are on these things, you can very easily double jump onto this and just walk again to the end of the level here. So easy fix there is just make these walls higher. Thing is that this is a test level. This is more of a level where I just throw in the random mechanics that I make, and when those how they feel inside of an actual level, rather than in a floating void. This is also a floating void, I am aware, but it's slightly better representation of what it feels like to go like through this one obstacle and then get to the next obstacle. These things, by the way, still need a lot of work. They hardly function as they should at the moment. So we have going back to the overworld level real quick, like the hub world. I don't think I changed anything here, but sure, let's save the changes. We have the issue that this area right here, the kill zone that I have here, is up way too low. I mean, you can just walk all the way down here and you'll be underwater and not dead. So, so the way we fix that is we literally just increase the height for this a little bit. And now, okay, maybe that's a little too much. now you will die sooner when you get to it. Other issue being this area right here is too steep. People land on here and then slide back into the water and get frustrated. So this needs to be flattened out a little bit, which actually I can probably just do right now, right here as well. We can flatten this a little. And no, that's not what I wanted to do. Smooth. Let's smooth things out a little here. That's still flattened. I want to smooth. It is already smooth. Let's sculpt things down slightly. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to sculpt things down so that it's easier to land on. Then we go over again and smooth things out a bit. This probably, yeah, that definitely needs a little more of a gradual increase in height there. More like that. Again, we go over with a smooth brush to make it look a little bit better. This is very rough at the moment, but at least now it'll be better functioning. So this is how I go over to fix a lot of these issues. So where were we? We have... Oh yeah, okay. So let's just play through this level right here. And there we go. There's also the issue, which actually almost every player that I've seen play has had, and that is that number one, these leaves are going way too quickly, which I actually kind of figured, but still. The real issue is that this leaf platform here, going up there, is for most people not very clear where they're supposed to go. With the change in lighting, it's a little less bad because the entire thing is a lot darker now, so that stands out a little more. But there's also this tree just entirely obstructing the way to go. So what I need to do is I need to remove that specific tree over there, or just make that wall a little bit higher so it doesn't obstruct, and then place one extra light in here to just highlight this area and make sure that people find the wall jump area here. Which brings me to the next point, and that is that people find the wall jump to be a little too floaty. And I can understand that, because the wall jump is entirely separate code, which I can show you now that we have screenshot. I might do you guys like this style of devlog, by the way, where I'm screen capturing actually like in Unreal and showing you like me live working on some things? Because I actually quite think that this is a lot of fun, maybe. And I also think that this is a lot easier to make. So anyway, we have the wall jump system here, which the issue with that is that at this point in time, we don't have any gravity changes. It's probably rather messy to look at, but what happens here is if we do a wall jump, we launch the character up this amount, and that's about it. Whereas if we do a normal jump, we launch the character up, this double jump, for instance, we launch the character up a similar amount, but then the gravity starts quickly ramping up. This is the gravity curve that we have, which could probably be a little steeper as well. That doesn't happen with the wall jump, so I probably, after a wall jump, just need to use this gravity curve to set the gravity as well. That might fix things a little bit. That's something that I just honestly hadn't noticed in playtesting myself. So it's very good that people noticed that. Together with the fact that I just need to tighten up the jump in general. But we already talked about that, I think, right? Where we have to, when I stop pressing a directional button, also immediately or almost immediately stop moving in that direction. People complained a lot about floaty physics. I don't think the physics are floaty. I think that is the issue that people are experiencing, the slipperiness in the air. So next up, we have a... I'll just go here real quick, because we can play from here. And if we go into the editing level, you have the wisps here. And they are collectibles. That's very neat. But when you die with these collectibles, the number of your score, which you can see in the top left corner, increasing to 6 now, disappears. It doesn't disappear, but it doesn't keep loaded. I'll just show you. I'll just go through this real quick. There's definitely an issue there with some errors appearing. Need to look into that. But when you go through this all, you pick up some wisps, probably more than I am right now because I'm just kind of rushing through. Again, some of the camera bounds need to be reset up here. They don't work quite as well as I would like them to. But okay, so I've got 13 right now. I jump off. And it goes back to 4. It should have gone back to 0. Now I'm really confused. So yeah, it doesn't keep all of the wisps that you have collected, which it definitely should. So I need to go ahead and figure out what is wrong there and how to fix it. And where the fuck am I in my own map? I don't know. So that is definitely a big problem, because that's also the variable I'm going to need to use to check if a player has found all the wisps in a level when they end the level, to get them that collectible trophy or not. So that's number one for the player. It's very frustrating to die and just find that they've lost all their collectibles, but also for the game itself, it's needed to have that reference variable. Backgrounds for the inactive parts in the editing level are somewhat confusing. This again comes down to depth perception, but also a separation between foreground and background elements. I need to like just put a layer there, just like a slightly opaque, like black box, so that there's a visual difference between foreground and background. Another way to do that might be depth of field. I don't really want to use depth of field because I think it makes things look not the way I want them to look. I don't want to like talk bad about depth of field because it can be a really nice effect. I don't want it in this game. The camera with the mouse is too sensitive. This is entirely true. I'll show you. This is how quickly you can move with the mouse. And this is the... Hold on. My controller isn't being recognized. The max speed with controller is roughly something like this, I think. That mostly comes down to just technically how controller inputs versus mouse inputs work. Controller inputs have a X and a Y axis that goes from +1 to -1 in both axes, whereas a mouse, that same X and Y value, is based on the speed you're moving your mouse and can go well over and under plus and -1. So I just need to clamp that at plus and -1, and that should be easy fix. I just need to figure out where those actual numbers are stored and where I can clamp them. We need to hide the spotlight better, as I already talked about. Yeah, the particles can be a little too in your face, right? So if you have your camera a little bit lower, usually I play a little bit more like this, and it's not a problem. I found that most people play more like this. And when you're in the full 16:9, which will actually just like play in a new editor window real quick here. That's very framey. This is very, very framey. But the particles are a little more in your face when you do it that way. So I need to fix that as well. That being said, the particles are temporary. Probably the final particle system there is going to have more particles on a very smaller scale. So I think that issue will just fix itself over time. So that's very, very good. I hadn't in that build yet disabled movement while the loading screen is happening, which you can see right now is actually the case. I'll just die real quick for you, so you can see the loading screen pop up. The respawn animation happens, and I don't move until the respawn animation is finished. So that is already fixed. This is a pretty nice view, actually. The kills on the water editing level is too high. We already talked about the lens I've already fixed. Okay, so another thing is sometimes the camera will obstruct the view between the camera, or an object rather, will obstruct the view between the camera and the player, and that can be annoying. Generally speaking, this is something that you just want to avoid anyway, but you can't always avoid that. So What we do instead is, you don't have any collisions, so that doesn't work. What we've done instead is I've downloaded an asset from the marketplace that just checks your current position, the camera's current position, and god damn, the frame lag is horrible. Mostly because I need to just build this level. That'll fix it, I think. But yeah, so when there's an object between you and the camera, it will now become a transparent material. So you can actually look through it and it won't obstruct your view. It still isn't very fancy, and it still is kind of jarring. So altogether, it is very much something that you're going to want to avoid, but it is very much a thing that will happen, especially with the more free roaming camera. So yeah, as you can see, the leaf is now transparent because it's between me and the camera, and then when it's not, it goes back to normal. There is something to be said about it being too abrupt and needing to be a bit more of a time period, like where it fades in. I personally don't think that that's the case, because unless you're on the edge literally doing this as I'm doing it right now, where it does look very obvious and annoying, in just normal play, it'll probably end up being mostly fine, I imagine. So, and here too it helps, right? Because I am just inside of this object, and the object becomes transparent. And here now too, this object becomes transparent, and even if I were to wall jump, it's not an ideal angle to use the wall jump on, but it helps certainly. So that is a plugin that I bought that I'm very happy that I have right now. Specifically for the more open levels. For the more hallway-based levels, I'm going to just have to design around not obstructing the camera view too much. And then we have, let's see. Oh yeah, there's one more bug that I already fixed, and then we are all the way through the feedback, which will have taken me 25 minutes. And then we still need to talk about the things that I've made this week. Wow, this is going to be a long one. There was a bug, which I can't show you right now because I've already fixed it, but I can show you how I fixed it. And that is, if you died in the middle of level after taking the checkpoint and you respawn at the checkpoint, the camera will just go to this default position. So if we go into the editing level, for instance, I'll just show you real quick. Wrong level. You can't see all my screens, so you don't know what I'm doing right now. But we're going into the editing level again. And if you were to die at, let's say, about this checkpoint right here, you're inside of a camera bounce box, meaning that the camera angle in this area should be like this. And it is, because you entered right over here. You enter this camera bound box, and you're side-scrolling. But then when you get to this checkpoint and you fall off right here, you respawn here. The game reloads with you here. But since you never actually entered this box, but you spawned inside of it, the camera doesn't change. So all I had to do to fix that, obviously, is that's actually... I've got the wrong object selected. Still, point stands. If we go into... I don't know which object it is, so we're going to go through this way. It's a bit of a messy level. I'll be honest with you about that. Okay, camera change. There we go. So what it does right now is at the start, when the level is loaded, it checks overlapping actors. So everything that's overlapping the current collision box. And it checks if the player character is overlapping. If that's true, it just immediately sets it to the right camera angle. It's a very easy fix. It's just something I overlooked because in order to notice this, you have to die. And I don't tend to die that much in these levels. Anymore, at least. So that is very much a good thing that I got out of all of the feedback. So that's 25 minutes almost of me talking about the feedback and showing you guys which parts I still need to fixing some things live. So now let's go real quick over what I added this week. You've already seen the death animation. It works as a death animation, a respawn animation. It works as a like disappearing and appearing in 2 levels animation. And I'm probably going to use a similar kind of effect for death animations for enemies, because at the moment they just kind of disappear. I also got the see-through objects that I already talked about. I fixed the camera system bug. I changed the camera system I already talked about. Added disable inputs while the loading screens are up. One thing that I'll say though is at the moment the loading screens get loaded in and unloaded. That's the word I was looking for, in a lot of different locations. And this is just purely like an efficiency thing that I've learned. And that is, if I go, for instance, into the code for the temple, is when you're in the proper bounding box, you start to disappear, and we get the loading screen. It's added to the viewport. You fade in, you then fade out, and with a delay, we open the level. That's all well and good. But this piece of code, in a variety of different ways, is at this moment added to like 10 different blueprints, because the same thing happens within the kill zone. If we go into the kill zone blueprint over here, you will see that when we overlap, we load game checkpoint. That's in the hallway game mode. So we go over there. I said we go over there. Apparently we don't go over there. Point being is the loading screen fading in and fading out is used in a lot of different areas at the moment, and I'm making objects and classes talk to each other all the time, whereas I could also just make one piece of code that just fades it in and fades it out, disabling your player input and enabling your player input at the proper moments at all times in the game instance, and just refer from every object that needs to use it to the game instance, rather than all these objects having to needlessly talk to each other. Because that gets very confusing very quickly. I don't think from an optimization, like computing standpoint, it makes much of a difference. But just for like me as the user of the engine, long term, this is going to get way too complicated and way too confusing. So what I need to learn to do more, and I'll get into the side project that I'm using this a lot more in, is have a lot of these things that different kinds of objects need to be able to use or trigger stored in a place where a lot of different objects can access it, rather than just replicating it or referring to other objects for that. So that's everything I've done, I think, this week on this game. That being said, we're going to save all, and then I'm going to open project chopping, because this is the side project that I've been working on for the last week. And you might be saying, well, that's not a lot to be there for for a week of work, and you would be kind of right. But when I start playing, you'll see things actually spawning and the actually being somewhat of a game. So what this game is it's supposed to be like a endless clicker game, but also kind of a tycoon game. So what you do is, these are trees that spawn randomly in this tree spawner. You go to them by clicking on them. Should also be compatible with touchscreen eventually. And then when your inventory is full, at the moment I've set that to 10, you go to this box and store the wood. At the end of the day, when this timer runs out to 0, all the wood you have gets sold on a random value between two values. I think at the moment it's between 0.8 and 1.2 gold per wood you collect. So there's a little bit of like an inflation-like mechanic, but it's mostly random, not to do with actual inflation or anything, because that would be hella complex to program. So this is the basic idea of the game, and eventually there will be some automatic cutting, like being able to hire people to cut things for you. Just AI going from the box to nearest tree, and when their inventory is full, back to the box, And this is the basic idea of the game. And so far, this works fantastically. What we have here is we have a blueprint object that is just this entire area, which spawns the trees, and upon loading, it also spawns the box, which it's probably going to just become part of this blueprint in general. Because one thing that I've learned here, and this is very important, right? We have a lot of different objects here, and you might think, oh, that's a good idea, right? The amount of wood that you have in total is stored in your character. Because that makes sense. Your character has the wood, and as such, you should store it in the character. And to a certain extent, that is true, and I think that's actually the way I'm doing it right now. But you could also say, why actually store it in the character? And that's more of the philosophy I'm using with the box. You could say, okay, you're storing your that's something I still need to fix. You're storing your wood in the box, so surely the box object is holding the variable about how much wood it has. And that is where I disagree. So if we go into the game instance here, you can see that we have the amount of wood that I have, the inventory size that I have, the box inventory, the amount of gold I have, and the timer. So what happens here is when we have a sell all event, which sells all the wood you have, but you can see nothing here triggers it. And that's because I've just got it stored here, because the actual timer is stored in the player character, as you will be able to see when I actually open that up here. We have a thing called main character, and that is where the timer is stored. It's literally just every second, we subtract a second. When there's a minute gone, it's a fairly simple system. And when there's 0 seconds and 0 minutes, we go to the game instance and use this sell all event that I've created here. Could I have just made that in here? Probably, but there's a very high likelihood that I'll also make a button that immediately, like, instant sells everything. And maybe that will be triggered through the box and not through the player character, or something like that, or maybe through an entirely different object. This way, whatever triggers it, I will always be able to easily access this. Same with this, right? Update box inventory. That just happens when I probably don't need to create a widget every single time. I probably need to remove this widget at the start of it first, but that's a bit of a optimization thing that I just now realized. Box inventory upgrade. So every time I enter this box collision, which you can see right here, this is the box collision. Every time I enter this, what it does is it goes to the game instance and it says box update. Could I just do that all in here? I could. Issue being is that I'm going to have multiple boxes, and I want to have all that data shared. Would I want every single box to have its own inventory? I would do it inside of this blueprint, but I don't want that. What I want is to have a system where I have an infinite amount of these fields, theoretically, where you can just walk to one or the other and just deposit your wood in any box, and at the end of the day, they all get sold. If you're doing that, why would you store all those different variables in different locations rather than just adding them up into one centralized place? And this is what I'm talking about. Making this game, or this prototype for this game, has really taught me to appreciate the value of having all this code centralized in one place and easily accessible. You don't want to make your entire game just in here, obviously. Some things you do want to have on an object-by-object basis. But things that you need to easily access, like the loading screen. There's a lot of different situations where you need to access the loading screen. So you can make that in one object and then just always remember to reference that one object. You can make that same code a billion different times in a billion different objects. Or you can make it once in your game instance, and always when you need to load the loading screen in, reference a game instance because you know that's where all the reusable shit is. I don't know if this is like technically how professional game developers do this and work with this. This makes a lot more sense to me than the way I've been doing it so far. So I'm going to have to change up a couple of things about my other game, but this is going to be the method that I'm going to be using moving forward a little bit more. So I've pretty much shown you the entire game here for this side project that I'm going to be working on for a while. I have a bit of an issue, I will admit, and that is that at the moment, there's two ways I could go about doing this, because I want this to be infinite, right? And there's a bit of an issue, because the way you move around is based on AI movement. And that AI movement, even though it's simple movement, needs a navigation mesh to be able to pathfind. But I can't make a navigation mesh that's infinitely large. So I could potentially make a system where the navigation mesh just updates and moves with the player character, which is pretty inefficient and leads to potentially quite a bit of bugs. But since this camera perspective is always static, what I could also do is when I move to, for instance, this gate over here, I could instead have the entire map scroll to the right. So instead of my camera moving to the left, I can just move everything else to the right. And I think that is probably the more sensible option of the two. The issue is at the moment, the way I have that set up, it does not work. It doesn't work at all. What it does instead is, the way it works, I can show you right now. It's not quite finished how it works, but I can show you how it kind of works. Let's put this at 25,000 so it's high enough up. You can see there's three of these areas. When I walk to the left, it spawns in three. Okay, at the moment it doesn't. It's supposed to spawn in three new ones here. Then move everything over one tile to the right and delete these three. It doesn't do that at the moment. What I had happen is it spawns in these three, and instead of moving everything to the right one tile, it moves the one that's up here to the right with the amount of tiles that we have. So there's a little bit of a bug going on there, which I'm not entirely sure what's causing it. I need to look into that. But that'll fix it. I also have a relatively clever setup here, which I am pretty proud of, which I can show you in the tree spawner. They have a coordination variable, which is set when they spawn, and they spawn in through the level blueprint. So when one spawns in, these are the 9 that I manually spawn in at the start. It spawns at a location and corresponding coordinates, a X and Y coordinate. So this is minus 2600. One of these tiles is 2600 units. So it's 1 to the left of the original. So it's minus 1, 0, 0. This one is diagonally left from it. So it's minus 2600, which is coordinates minus 1, minus 1. And the very nice thing about this is because the map is two-dimensional, I only need to use two of the numbers in this vector. So I can use a third one for a biome. So I can make like light forest, like winter forest, like swamp. And I can very easily do that based on just a random integer for this third variable, which is very, very helpful indeed. So that helps. And if I needed to do any more, I could just change this into a different kind of vector, which has, for instance, a transform vector, which has location data, which is a three-dimensional vector, scale data, which is a three-dimensional vector, and rotation data, which is a three-dimensional vector, meaning that it's a nine-dimensional vector. It's a variable that holds 9 values, and usually that's used to drive the transform properties of an object, but you can use it for literally anything else. Like this is usually these vectors are supposed to be used for location. As you can see, they have the same pin color. At the moment, I'm technically using them for location, but not in the way that they are intended to. And it just works, right? The way I'm doing, the reason I'm doing this, by the way, is because when I despawn something, I can then save the data for that specific tree spawner based on its coordinations. And when then it gets respawned, it can look at, okay, do we have one of these yet? Yes. Respawn the one that we yeeted last time around. But that's quite a bit in the future. First and foremost, I need to figure out the fucking camera movement. But this is a side project that I've been working on for the past week, aside from working on a 3D platform. So I expect that this is something that I can finish within a couple of months and just like put out on at least a couple of platforms. I'm mostly aiming to have this on the Google Play Store. Probably gonna try to put it up on at least itch.io, but maybe see if like I can get a Steam page up and running for this as well by the time we get to summer of next year. That would be kind of neat. So there's been kind of a different sort of devlog than usual. It's been a bit longer as well. Do let me know if you enjoyed like the screen capture method of devlog as well. I don't mind like doing this as a face cam thing, but my face cam is just, it's kind of problematic. And being able to just like sit down, show you guys things that I'm talking about live, I actually think it might just like be better for the format anyway. So I'll see you all next time. Bye.